Hello folks, Scott with Dallas Paint Correction and Auto Detailing here in Dallas, Texas. If you notice the title of this video, I'm not sure what it's going to be. The worst cleaner and method to cleaning an engine bay, and revealing one of the biggest hacks on the planet when it comes to engine bay cleaning. Folks, about a week ago I received a call from a customer watch group. My heart sunk when I picked up the phone and they introduced themselves and they said, "Scott, we've been watching your YouTube channel." I said, "Oh my God, have I done something wrong?" And they said, "No, Scott, we actually enjoy you." They said, "Your only crime is you talk too much." I had to laugh. One of the things they asked me is they said, "Scott, we'd like you to review a couple of videos for us. We have a client of theirs, a company, that wanted some verification from, call me an expert, call me what you want, I don't know." And I said, "Well, I'm a little uncomfortable doing that. What exactly do you have?" They sent me a link to a video. They sent me a link to a video of somebody doing this process I'm about ready to do on this engine bay for the sake of cleaning it. The way this works, folks, this is one of the biggest hacks in engine bay detailing. I have dealt with this for a very long time. Mr. and Mrs. Jones they'll call a professional detailer and say, "John, we want you to come out and detail our engine, but we don't want you using water. We think it's not safe." That so-called professional detailer will go, "Oh, I got a great way to clean an engine bay and I'll never use water, and it's one of the safest ways to do it." What they'll do, folks, is they'll open up the engine bay for Mr. and Mrs. Jones. They will notice the top of the engine bay and they'll go, "Okay, we got some dust and dirt on these plastics." They'll take a rag, they'll spray their cleaner in it, and they'll wipe off the dust and dirt on the top of the engine bay that the customer can see with their visible eye standing in front of it. Then what they're going to do is, in my opinion, taking a relatively easy and safe process and making it dangerous. Not so much for the human being, but they could potentially be causing damage inside the engine bay. I have this cleaner wrapped around this towel. I'll show you what it is when I'm done. I'll shake it up and I'll spray it all over my engine. I'll allow my engine to be the guinea pig. When you spray this stuff, it's foamy. It looks wonderful. It looks like super clean, right? It looks like O'Reilly's foamy degreaser. And I'm spraying it all over the place. They're just gonna let this stuff dwell on all these plastic surfaces, all the surfaces around the engine. This is a huge hack. Folks, I've had to go in and remove this stuff for my customers, and I'll tell you why. They'll spray it all over the engine. It'll look wonderful, it'll look great as soon as this white stuff, the white foam, evaporates. Holy crap, I know this is so bad, yet I'm gonna allow my engine to be a guinea pig for this process. I'll spray it all over the place, right? Okay, folks, what this stuff is, you saw me make a video about this. It is Meguiar's Hot Shine Foam, right? Many of you, when you looked at that video, saw me spray it on the wheel, and you start to see some of the browning drift down off the tire and travel to the bottom of the tire. This is a little misleading. I beat up Meguiar's for it on tires, but it's not dangerous to use it on tires, but it is dangerous to use it in an engine bay. This stuff has the ability to clean, shine, and protect. Rubber, plastic, whatever you want to do. How does this stuff actually work as a cleaner? Well, it's not a very effective cleaner, but it can begin to emulsify or break down some grease and grime. What happens, because we're not rinsing the engine now, this grease and grime will travel a little bit. It only has so much advantage of gravity, and it will kind of travel some of that stuff, that grease and grime. It's pulled off the engine, it will start to drift down. It will not make it all the way to the ground, folks. Very rare it does. Most of it is just going to take the dirt and move it somewhere else. This is where the problem becomes dangerous. Folks, this is an alternator off a 1970, 1980 pickup truck, Chevys, whatever, to 10SI. It's actually a Type 116 because it's got an R terminal on it to run a tachometer. Alternators years ago, just like this one, were on top of the engine. Not such a big problem, but it is still a problem if they spray this stuff all over it. What will happen is that grease and grime and this gooey stuff I just sprayed on that engine could travel inside this alternator, and now it gets trapped. It gets trapped around the rotor and the brush assembly, which is on swing arms. It'll make the alternator light come on. The alternator won't work. Also, this product is filled with petroleum distillates, all sorts of nasty stuff. The stator, which is this coil inside the alternator, this coil looks like it's just a bunch of wires jammed and touching one another. It is not. Each one of these wires are independent from one another. They are insulated. They are laminated. This petroleum distillate has the ability to be able to start eating through that lamination that's wrapped around these wires, and what will happen is the stator will begin to short out. We call it an open. We call it a direct short in the stator. Okay, now let's fast forward to our time zone, right? Or what car manufacturers are doing today. If you notice, that alternator had the regulator and the brush holder and the rectifier inside of it. What car manufacturers are doing now, here's an alternator that's off a newer Chevy, kind of like the one I have on my truck now. This is a CS130D. It's called a CS130D. D130 or something like that, I can't remember. I'm sorry, folks. But if you notice, the back of this alternator has a rectifier on it, a regulator, the brush holder assembly. The way this is on the back of the vehicle or on the vehicle, it could be on top of the engine or down low on the side of the engine. As this stuff drips, there's a little plastic cover. This plastic cover's got holes all over it. Why do they do this? Well, manufacturers are learning if they move the rectifier and regulator and brush holder out from inside the alternator, they'll function longer, they'll function better. Voltage set points will be better when it gets really hot. Just a small little tip and a side note. But they got a little plastic cover on it. Imagine all that grease and grime that now traveled off the engine and ran inside this stuff and gunked up. It will gunk up around the rotor and the brush holder there, and you're going to have an alternator fail. Again, because you're not using free-flowing water to rinse this stuff off. Folks, they'll use Meguiar's, they'll use any type of tire foam, by Armorall, whatever the case may be, and they'll do this to the customer. Why do they do this? They do this because they live in fear. They do this because they take advantage of the fear of the customer. We don't want you using free-flowing water. We think there's professional detailers that will actually tell their customers that if you use free-flowing water on the engine, it will void the warranty. Folks, that is not true. I'm not going to dispute it. It is not true. If you do this right, you have a professional do it, or you do it yourself, and you use common sense, you use the right products, you use free-flowing water if you choose, and you rinse this off properly. What is the very next thing? If you've been watching my channel, what do? I dry the engine completely with a leaf blower. I want to blow any standing water off any areas that could be potentially dangerous before I put any type of water-based dressing on the engine. Third or fourth point with this stuff, it's got a lot of petroleum distillates. It's going to make it look all shiny and glossy. The customer's going to think that the guy actually cleaned the engine. This stuff will stink. It will start to travel inside the car. I've been asked to remove this process so many times for my customers. They can smell it inside the car. And let me tell you something, when this stuff begins to dry, it is like maple syrup. It's gooey. A lot of dust and dirt's going to not attract to it. It's not a magnet, but it will stick to it easier. Let me tell you what will void your warranty. This stuff used on an engine bay, and it drifts into these areas like the alternator, or what about the spark plug area? A lot of you know that area, that port, is much deeper inside some engines. Imagine this stuff, which can travel grease and grime down into that port, and it starts to turn into a solid as it dries. What if the customer innocently changes the spark plug and he breaks that bond of this stuff that's all around the spark plug, and he pulls the spark plug out and that stuff drops into the engine? I will tell you that you're most likely going to void the warranty if the dealer changes your spark plug and realizes what you did or a professional detailer did for you. Also, the alternator will become like a maple syrup gooey thing. You may innocently be getting all that stuff on it because it's below the engine, it's on the side or towards the bottom, and this stuff drips down. I promise you, when the dealer removes that alternator because the alternator light came on and it's bad, and he picks it up and it's greasy and slimy, he's going to tell you voided the warranty. Folks, this is, in my opinion, taking a very easy process if you understand how to do it and turning it into a nightmare. They tell you not to judge a book by its cover. I promise you, if you open up this book and start reading all the pages of how it actually works, it takes a story and turns it into a nightmare. This is a hack. This is dangerous. This is far more dangerous than using free-flowing water appropriately and responsibly to clean an engine. You want a degreaser, something like Super Clean, Meguiar's Super Degreaser, Meguiar's All-Purpose Cleaner, Simple Green, whatever you choose. Agitate the top of this engine and rinse it off completely so it's not sitting on the engine, and then dry it appropriately. Engines can get wet. They cannot get submerged underwater. That is different. All the connections in a lot of modern day engines have dielectric grease in them. The fuse box cover has a rubber seal around it. When it's properly fastened, water can't get in there. Yes, common sense has to be applied. Don't put a power washer at 3,000 psi and shooting that fuse box until it blows up and you pour water inside the fuse box. If that happens, get rid of the water as quickly as possible. Folks, this is a huge hack. I have had to remove it for my customers. It will make the engine bay look amazing. They have taken advantage of the customer's fear, didn't want to use free-flowing water. The customer innocently now has huge liability coming their way or potentially coming their way, all because a professional detailer who's living in fear is so worried about lack. He needs to find a way to be relevant. There are so many fine young men, women, you name it, who are professionally detailing, trying to do this process right, that cannot get customers to give them $50 or $60 to do this, but they're willing to let a guy who will do this process for 20 bucks only to open the door for more potential danger. It doesn't make sense. I just wanted to share it with you folks. There are so many dangers with doing this. If it's your own engine, you understand the risks, go ahead and do it. It's up to you. If you're a professional detailer and you think this is the way to detail somebody's engine, I am sorry, folks. I will not judge you. I will not say that you are evil. You're not. You are living in fear. You believe you have to do this because you have to be relevant and try to make $1. Folks, making 20 bucks to do this to somebody's engine could open up the door to your fanny with a lot of liability. I love you all. I want you to do it right, do it correctly, or however you feel it's necessary. I just wanted to talk about this. That Consumer Watch Group reached out to me. I hesitated about making this video, but it's important that we all are honest, transparent, loving with one another, stop living in fear and believing we have to do this, all at the sake of throwing our customers under the bus to make $20 or $30 in the process. I love you all. Let me get this off my engine. I'll talk to you soon.